Chapo's captured rivals and spurned lieutenants are lining up to testify against him, and this is according to documents obtained by EFE News. Former Sinaloa lieutenants are expected to confront El Chapo in court. The Flores brothers ran a major portion of the Sinaloa cartel out of Chicago, but became DEA informants in 2008 in exchange for not getting life behind bars, and also a former rival of the Beltran Leyva organization will also likely testify against the Sinaloa cartel boss. And they also talked about how La Barbie, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, she got the name because she was just so beautiful, and I guess they said she looks like a Barbie doll. She's has a possibility to testify against him in order to get time off. So it just shows there is no honor among thieves, whether you see the old gangster movies where everybody kills each other, everybody snitches on each other. It usually doesn't end well. They say if you live that type of lifestyle, you end up dead or in jail, and that's exactly what's going to happen to the majority of the people I just talked about here. And we'll end tonight on this. I do a lot of human trafficking stories and talk to people, and one of the questions I usually ask the person, whether they be a college professor or activist or whoever, do you think if we legalize prostitution, a lot of the human trafficking issues would go away? And when I say legalize, I'm talking about consenting adults of age. And they say, the majority of them, that they don't think the problem would go away if you legalize prostitution. And now we see this World Human Rights Group publishes policy to legalize prostitution. And this is Amnesty International basically saying that it may help if you legalize prostitution. And I've heard libertarian arguments for legalizing prostitution. To each his own. I'd like to hear your arguments whether prostitution should be legal or illegal. Stay tuned after this for more special reports.
Off to you. And we have a typist here that is going to go ahead and type them into the box as you answer them. So just to start off, is there anything that you'd like to tell the people of Reddit?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be here. Secondarily, no question is off limits tonight, although I reserve the right not to answer some questions, of course. I am assuming right off the bat that the MoveOn.org crowd and the Black Lives Matter crowd and the David Brock Media Matters crowd have already infiltrated our audience, but that's fine. I will take all comers, and I'm prepared to talk about Trump, about politics, about my books, about men's style, a little fashion advice, whatever folks want to talk about. I'm just delighted to be here.
Roger, on your Wikipedia page, you were quoted as saying, in the first grade, I remember going through the cafeteria line and telling every kid that Nixon was in favor of school on Saturdays. It was my first political trick. What other political tricks have you pulled?
Well, the reason that trick is important is because my elementary school was having a mock election, Kennedy versus Nixon. I was, for some reason, I was in favor of John Kennedy because I thought he had better hair than Nixon. And my parents were Catholics, although they were Republicans, and they kind of liked Jack Kennedy. There was a real pull there, I think, although I believe they voted for Nixon. In any event, I learned the value of disinformation from a strategic point of view. But let me say, politics is not beanbag, and every political leader and political successful elected official has used subterfuge and artifice. Certainly Bill Clinton, Franklin Roosevelt, Richard Nixon, all of them. The problem is that in the old days, when we had a limited media oversight and we only had 3 networks and a couple national newspapers, essentially, I think the establishment, be it the government or establishment media, conspired to control a certain narrative. After all, we can't tell the people the truth. They might get panicked. So for their own good. Today, of course, with the rise of the internet and talk radio and cable television, information can no longer be suppressed. And that's why it's important to look back at a number of historical milestones, whether it is 9/11 or whether it is the Iraq War, or whether it is the Kennedy assassination, with fresh eyes and with an independent alternative media.
One of the biggest benefits to a Trump-Bernie debate would be how small, cowardly, and protected it'd make crooked Hillary look for backing out of her final Fox News debate against Sanders. Do you think the risks of this debate would be worth the reward? And if so, could you place odds on the outcome?
No, I would oppose this debate because strategically, actually, I believe what Trump ought to be doing is to stress those issues that he shares with Bernie. They both oppose the war. They both oppose NAFTA. They're both opposed to TPP and TPA. They both oppose the globalist trade deals that have, as Ross Perot famously said, sucked the jobs out of America. So going into a debate with Bernie, you would end up talking about foreign policy, where he's a peacenik, and Trump is I would say, a non-interventionist, not a neocon, and certainly not an isolationist. But I think you want to be looking for things that you have in common. Now, I don't think that Trump will win Bernie's hard left voters, but I do think the blue collar Democratic voters in the Rust Belt who realize that they have been left out by the New World Order economy of the Bushes and Clintons are ripe territory for Donald Trump. I think he should go out of his way not to alienate Bernie or his supporters.
So here's a pretty interesting question from Triggly Puffs herself. Ha ha ha. What is your opinion on the Holder Justice Department's failure to investigate and prosecute Wall Street fraud in the lead up to the financial crisis?
The Wall Street crooks, the insiders, are insulated because they have political pull and they have money. This is the most corrupt Justice Department in American history. Eric Holder makes John Mitchell look like St. Thomas Aquinas when it comes to corruption, whether it is Fast and Furious, whether it is Hillary's email. There's no need for criminal intent here. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence. Criminal negligence is clear, and she's broken the law. General David Petraeus' career was destroyed for a much lesser transgression involving classified documents. That's before we even get to the Clinton Foundation, which is the largest money laundering fraud in U.S. history. It is a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scam. It is not a charity. It's a slush fund for grifters. It is the vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes. Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton would steal a hot stove. And I think this whole area is going to be one of enormous vulnerability. You can sum this issue up in one word: greed.
What role, if any, would you play in a Donald Trump administration?
None whatsoever. First of all, I doubt that I could be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. I have lived a very colorful life. I make no bones about it. I think it is interesting that when I published the Clinton's War on Women, the result has been a mountain of personal vilification attacking me. I'm not running for president. Chris Cuomo says to Donald Trump, "You are attacking Hillary for the indiscretions of her husband." This is not about indiscretions. It's not about consensual sex. It's not about adultery. It's not about marital infidelity. It's not about girlfriends or mistresses or one-night stands. It's about sexual assault and rape. The number of women who have accused Bill Clinton is staggering, and they are entirely believable. They have not been paid by anyone to bear false witness against Bill, but that's part of the strategy: attack the women. The difference between Bill Cosby and Bill Clinton is that Bill Cosby drugged his victims, where Bill Clinton physically overpowered his and bit them. That is the sad truth. Bill Clinton is a predator, and the mainstream media doesn't want to go there with that narrative. They want to redefine this as being about consensual sex.
Any chance of Ron Paul being the head of the Treasury? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I'd rather see Ron Paul be the head of the Fed. That would be my first pick. But Donald Trump has a healthy respect for Ron Paul based on his own statements. He did once make the argument at a CPAC conference that Ron could not win. He turned out to be right about that. But in many ways, Trump has come out in favor of the auditing the Fed. And I think that the support of the Ron Paul faction of the party has been a very important element of Trump's rise. They were among the earlier parts of the party, including the Tea Party, and then a lot of new people who've never been in the party before who formed the Trump coalition.
Does brain force really work?
It really does work. Look, I had a very debilitating illness when I was younger. And it became very clear after a huge number of tests that there was very little that Western medicine could do for me other than wait. And therefore, I began pursuing alternative medicines like acupuncture, like Chinese herbology, like natural supplements to see how they affected both my mental and physical performance. And they, I think, improved my athletic performance, and they improved my balance, and they improved my energy. So, yes, I think that many of the products that I have used, that I have gotten at INFOWARS and other places have worked. Others I've been less satisfied with. But as far as brain force is concerned, I've got so many things on my mind right now, it's quite helpful.
How do you think the, quote, protesters are affecting the perception of Trump throughout the greater minds of the United States? I
think that this is helping galvanize votes for Trump. I think this helps motivate people to register to vote for Trump. This is a polarizing election. And this effort to abridge the First Amendment rights of Trump and his supporters, to shout him down, the propensity to provoke or incite violence so that the violence can then be blamed on Trump.
Welcome to the BS Club, hosted by the United Kingdom's New World Order-backed propaganda machine, The Guardian. Apparently, The Guardian didn't have any problem rolling out the following baseless drivel to its readers/YouTube viewers. Of course, commenting on the U.S. presidential election whilst ignoring the massive problems in your own country is a sketchy undertaking to begin with. But when your publication is run by an elitist New World Order lackey like Dame Liz Forgan, the Dame being her high Masonic title, allowing Forgan to rub elbows with royalty, media oligarchs, and the Lord Rothschild, you do as expected. Here is what the Telegraph had to say about Dame Liz in 2013 before she became the chair of Scott Trust Limited, the British company that owns the Guardian Media Group. The Telegraph writes, "Why not spend £8,000 on a leaving due, a party held when leaving a job? That's what Dame Liz and her cast are entitled to. That's what the little people are there to pay for. There could be no clearer demonstration of the contempt that Dame Liz, who exudes the haughty sense of self-worth and entitlement that typifies the arts establishment, has for the rest of us, that she chose a drinks party funded by the taxpayer to attack the government for cutting the arts budget. Contempt and a jaw-dropping lack of self-awareness. So, without further ado, here is The Guardian's Stephen Thrasher looking forward to the day when America's dying white majority is overthrown and a political revolution led by people of color ends the white supremacist system currently represented by Donald Trump's presidential campaign."
When we had a clear symbol that the country is literally becoming more black, why shouldn't we have expected his successor to be the meanest, whitest, most vile bigot possible? And when protesters demanded that Black Lives Matter, why shouldn't we have anticipated the rise of a candidate who encourages violence against peaceful demonstrators? President Trump would fit right into American history. I'm waiting for the year 2043, when this white supremacist nation becomes mostly non-white. That's when true political revolution might be possible.
Thrasher, you work for the so-called dying white majority, completely ignoring that Europe and now the United States are quietly being invaded by Sharia law zealots hell-bent on throwing people of Thrasher's persuasion off of rooftops. Not to be outdone in the threat-laced propaganda lecturing is Guardian columnist Jonathan Friedland.
The world is watching. Then the world was inspired. Now we're scared. He won't rule out dropping a nuclear bomb on Europe. Islamophobia would be a matter of state policy. If you're Mexican, you'll know that the American president thinks you're basically a criminal or a rapist. There'll be a surge of what people will call anti-Americanism. People will mock the nation as dumb, vulgar and aggressive. It'll be like it was in the George W. Bush years, only much, much worse.
Friedland, your smug elitist arrogance and weak threats are just as bad as your flaccid declaration of anti-Americanism. Your sycophantic jabbering makes me wonder